Hello, everyone. Welcome to Silicon Dragon Global. Today we have a very special person joining us, Wei Jiang, who is here on the screen. You can say hi to him. Hi, Wei.
Hello, hello. Hi, Rebecca. Thank you for inviting me. Hello, everybody.
Good, good. So Wei is a very dynamic venture capitalist. I've known him for quite some time. He's also been in the hot seat over in China with eBay and Google. So he has quite the experience. But let me just say a few words of welcome. My name is Rebecca Fannin, Silicon Dragon. I'm an author, a journalist, and an online host now as well. So you can see my 3 books here, including the translated versions. So hopefully you'll all go out and buy them immediately. No, I'm just kidding. So we also have our Silicon Dragon Circle membership. I know many of you who are on today are members. I really appreciate you being on today. And I understand it's great weather everywhere that we have people attending. So thank you doubly for joining us on beautiful days and also for being members. I really appreciate that. And thank you to Invest Hong Kong for their series support. So today, as I said, we have Wei Jiang. He is with his new firm, CatchLight Capital Partners, and we're going to be speaking with Wei in a minute, but just let me introduce him first. So Wei actually previously to starting CatchLight was a venture partner at ZhenFund, and ZhenFund is one of the leading China US VCs. And so Wei was there for several years. Before that, he was a CMO at Google China. And he was also a founder, CEO. He's been an entrepreneur in China as well. The company was sold to a NASDAQ listed company in Shanghai. He was front row seat at eBay China, really in the trenches, actually, working with Meg Whitman on eBay in China during a time when there was a lot of battling going on with Alibaba. So interesting time. He's also been with Intuit. He's been acting general manager of NBC Internet Unit and started his career at FedEx in Memphis. He's originally from Beijing, and he came to the US in 1990 after graduating from Peking University with a BA in information systems. He got his MBA and his master's in medical statistics from University of Rochester, MBA from William E. Simon Graduate School. And so Wei is a bit of a Renaissance person. He likes art, music, reading, and there's hiking in there too. So hello Wei. And so this is a little bit about Wei's new fund. And Wei, maybe you could make some remarks, just tell people what this new fund is all about and why you've created it, because I think it's really interesting that you have basically absorbed the companies, the portfolio companies of ZhenFund, the ones that you had actually led for ZhenFund. And there's some really interesting companies in here. And these are all US companies. They were deals mostly from China investors who are no longer active in the US. So Wei, tell us, why
Yes,
did
Rebecca.
you, tell us, why did you start this fund? Why did you
Great.
start this? I think it's very well timed. And just tell us about it.
Well, thank you, Rebecca, for the warm intro. So CatchLight is the fund that my partner Greg and I have set up last year. And the story goes back to 2018. So at the time, I was with ZhenFund making investment out of Silicon Valley. We invested in overseas Chinese, and we also invested in non-Chinese startup founders. Okay. And so in August 2018, right, there are 2 laws that came out signed by President Trump at the time. So one of which is called FIRMA, or CFIUS reform, right? Sure. This one actually limit in a significant way foreign investors and Chinese in particular, right? I think 90%, 95% of focus was Chinese, that can invest in the US or even manage their portfolio companies in the US.
Right.
And the other one is relevant, is also Export Control Review Act.
Mm-hmm.
So, since then, some of the Chinese VCs stopped operating, investing in the US. And then some of them actually withdrew from the US. My employer at the time, ZhenFund, decided that they don't want to operate in the US anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So around the time, I heard from our portfolio CEOs that basically said that, look, we were happy to receive your investment a couple of years ago, and we're a little bit concerned today, right? Because having you in our cap table can potentially create trouble for our future fundraising. And sometimes even create trouble when we try to sign big contracts, right, with the large customers. If the customer happen to have dual use technologies, for example, a civilian use and a military use, they don't want to have any company that with Chinese investors in their capital to work with them. So, so that's the message that from several CEOs. And we also, heard in a very nice way from our co-investors, U.S. co-investors, right? They're trying to protect their assets, right, as much as they can. And then, you also hear the confusion from the Chinese investors. They're like, we were trying to do our best in investing, and all of a sudden we can't invest, right, in a meaningful way. So then, my friend Greg and I got together. So we decided, we will just, maybe raise a fund. And we'll help all three parties. First we'll help U.S. Entrepreneurs to clean up their cap table, and then we'll help U.S. co-investors, right, to make sure that they feel their assets is, protected, and then we'll also help Chinese investors to provide an exit for them when they no longer can invest, nor can they manage their portfolios, right? So far that's working out pretty well, and then that's our strategy. So. Our new fund primarily, do the secondary transactions, and then we also do some other primary investment on the side, as a secondary focus or as a not a number one priority, lower priority. But just because there's so many of the companies out there, the U.S. Tech startups, having Chinese investors in their cap table. So our life has been busy.
Right. So how many prospects do you think are out there? How many companies do you think are?
From the third-party vendor, Rhodium Group, which I know some people know them and we're friendly with the group too. So they estimated close to 3,000 U.S. companies, tech startups, have Chinese investors. And that's from a year ago. And last year, it was another interesting year. So I'm guessing that today's data would be around maybe 3,000 companies.
Oh, that's quite a lot.
Right.
And you're mainly focused on technology, tech startups, right? Or emerging companies in tech.
Yeah. So technology companies would be the lion's share of Chinese investment in the U.S. Yeah. Which is I think you may be interested in getting to that later in your questions. But sometimes if you compare VC investment in China and VC investment in the US, especially in Silicon Valley, they're percentage-wise, a lot more tech startups, meaning that startups focusing on technology or enabled by new technology in the US than those in China. In China, you see more model innovation. You see more execution innovation. So that's interesting contrast.
So what's the future for these companies that you're investing in, or that you've actually absorbed? What's the future for them now that they're been restructured? I mean, is there like a major runway out there, or is there sort of a cast against them because they were originally invested by Chinese, or not?
So many of them are doing fine. So we just come in. We replace one of the Chinese investors. We haven't replaced everybody from China yet, But they do have other investors. Many of them are non-Chinese investors. And some are doing well because they have great product, they have great offerings, and so they continue on the path. And interestingly, my incomplete data set suggests that the Chinese investors, all of them, thousands of companies that they have invested, they have actually made some very good investments. So interestingly, yeah, so the quality of investment seemed to be pretty high.
Okay,
average,
so yeah, that's interesting. So what are some examples in your own portfolio then of ones that seem really promising?
So I mean, the portfolio we have are early stage companies, and then ZhenFund invested in them or some other invested in them before when they were raising seed round, right? So after a few years, some of them have reached C round, B round, and I have in my portfolio one unicorn and two other on the way. So the return has been pretty good. So we made an acquisition last year, and by this year, barely 6 months later, we have a very nice multiple. So our new LPs are very happy about the performance.
I see. Which one is the unicorn?
So the unicorn is a blockchain company out of New York, and they're building the next generation of internet or Web 3.0, as they call it. This is the company that if you drive up and down the 101, you'll see the billboard. Instead of what Google says, "Don't be evil," they cross out the "don't" and they replace with a "can't," right? So that's their future vision of Web 3.0. And they are the company, if you see the HBO Silicon Valley TV series, they're the story for season 5.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Are you going to be in that series then as an investor?
So we have been their investor since early days. So we have a very good experience with them.
Okay, so what's been the reaction from the LP community to what you're doing now?
So in general, very positive. We're friendly to everybody. We offer solutions to everybody, and some Chinese companies felt stuck, right? So they funds they come to us, and also some other co-investors have reached out to us proactively. And occasionally we also hear from the companies, or even occasionally from U.S. agencies. For example, some U.S. agencies wanted to use the product from some of our potential portfolio companies, and then only to find out that they can't because they have some major Chinese investors in their cap table. So their suggestion is, look, Mr. CEO, either clean up your cap table or we can't use you.
I see. Well, have you heard from Washington, D.C. about what you're doing?
So we don't talk to them on a regular basis. But if what I just shared qualifies, we heard from them. Occasionally, we do hear recommendations from some agencies that the company come talk to us.
I see. Well, so how many other funds are there out there like yours? Are you competing for these kinds of deals, or what's the landscape like?
So it's the early days. We haven't heard any footsteps in this area. We are, by nature, we're doing secondary transactions, but also we're very different than your regular secondary fund, right? They're huge. They do later stage fund, and people like us, we are familiar. We're comfortable with early stage, mid stage companies, and we acquire those companies by the portfolio, right? Sometimes you have dozens of companies in the portfolio, and then the asset add up to fair market value, maybe $30 million, $50 million, $100 million. That's really too small for your typical secondary fund. And so this is our sweet spot. So also, if you do this, you have to really comply to CFIUS regulations. You have to have the right citizenship. Your LPs cannot be majority Chinese or a Greater China LPs. So this presents some challenges.
Yeah, so that gets into this whole issue of the U.S.-China frictions and how that's impacting tech investing and how that's impacting technology development with decoupling and what the future is going to be. Are we going to continue to see these two worlds instead of what we had before, kind of a U.S.-China cross-border dynamic? What do you think? Say 5 years going out, is this just how it's going to be now, U.S. and China separately?
Yeah, it seems like every day the tension just increases between the two countries. So the short answer is, short to medium term, I feel, it becomes more negative. And the longer term, my hope is, the two countries finds a way to not only coexist, but also, collaborate in some way, in some fashion. Because Rebecca, we talk about this. You've been there for a long time, and you've been observing this. To me, there's just huge and significant synergies, right, between the two countries, two economies, and even two cultures. So, it'd be really sad if these two economies don't find a way to collaborate in some ways. So long term, I am optimistic. I don't know what long-term means in this case. Is that 5 years, 7 years, or even 10 years? So, but one day, right?
So your team, is it all here in Silicon Valley then?
Yeah, so we are the two founding partners are here. We have 5 people, and one person is actually in Korea as we speak, just the COVID situation, but he's coming back.
Okay, so how many investments do you think you'll actually be making then? Are you going to expand from this? You have about a dozen right now in your portfolio. How many would you think you'll be making overall?
So I hope we'll be making at least hundreds, if not thousands. So compared to a typical VC fund, we make acquisitions more frequently, and when we make one, it's typically not just one asset. We make a bunch, and so we raise funds frequently as well. So if we have our way, we'll raise a fund every 6 months, and it looks like we're doing that. So it's just much faster in pace than.
Your LPs are from where?
So by CFIUS requirement, right? Overwhelming majority of our LPs are US, and then we're looking at potentially next round, maybe one UK, one Canadian, but we do have one LP from last round, which is a Japanese/Taiwanese fund.
I see.
Yeah, but we try not to get money from China, which is for me personally, right? My social capital, is kind of not fully taken advantage of. It'd be a lot easier if I could raise money from mainland China, but no, I can't. Kind of defeats the purpose.
Right. So with the current frictions, there's also talk that, well, and it's already happening as a trend. The Chinese companies are listing in Hong Kong instead of, they might have gone to NASDAQ or NYSE in the past, but now they're going to Hong Kong. For instance, ByteDance may list in Hong Kong, right?
Yeah, the latest news is they're putting it on hold, right? I think, but they were. I think Hong Kong would be a good destination for them once they find a way to untangle the TikTok and the Douyin and the rest.
Right. Yeah. ByteDance. Yeah. With TikTok. Yeah.
Yeah.
Big issue. So how do you see that playing out? I mean, some of these Chinese companies or Chinese tech that are used in the U.S., like WeChat and TikTok. Do you think that whole uproar about how they were being used in the U.S. by consumers and businesses. Is that over or not?
Yeah, so obviously I pay close attention to it. And from what I heard is that the second half of the year, we anticipate a lot of new initiatives out of CFIUS. That means that they'll issue more penalties to the previous Chinese investors who invested in the US tech startups without getting their approval. So, yeah, so that's being reported. So
yeah, under the Biden administration. So
yeah, the law still stands, right? So
yeah, so I mean, what's one of the things that we talked about in getting prepared for this today is all the new restrictions and the new rules and how that's impacting standardization and all that.
I was counting it a couple of days ago. I feel like there are like 4 or 5 major laws and policies came out. That's aimed in this area. U.S.-China tension. At the core, it is really try to decouple. I don't know. Decouple is still the fashionable word, or bifurcation is the new word. But they try to separate, technology, China from U.S. technology, or protect U.S. technology IP from China. So I think that's the core of all these activities.
So why did you get into VC? You were basically an executive at some major companies that had China operations like eBay and Google. Why did you become a VC?
When I say this, I'll make some people very unhappy, I'm sure. But after it's like once you have experience running a startup, creating a startup, it's really hard to come back to a large company. Google is, in many ways, pretty exceptional. But still, when I was ready after 6 years at Google, I was ready to move back to Silicon Valley and then try my hands at Google headquarters in London, right? I tried a few days in there. I got really bored. Nobody needed me. I felt like I became immediately a middle layer. I didn't. Yeah, for many days I didn't. Nobody needed me to make any decision, to see any customer. I was just sitting there, breathing the air. So I wanted to get closer to the startups. That's where the excitement is. So.
Okay, but you've also done startups and you've done executive management, and now you've done VC as well.
So, yeah, VC is really very close to startups, right? So I feel like having been there myself, I can relate to how the founders feel, and then I can see, maybe it's just illusional, but I feel like I can see better, clearer, how the real situation may be. So because everybody is very optimistic, right? If you see an entrepreneur, you ask them how they're doing, they're like, oh, great, couldn't be better, never better. But after 10 minutes, the real situation may come out.
Right. So were you in China with the whole Google and Baidu thing? Because Hal Kalman is making some remarks about it here over on the chat. And I reported all that in my first book, Silicon Dragon, and God, it was really very interesting. The whole battle between Google, China, and Baidu, as well as the eBay and Alibaba one, which I know you were in the thick of that. But I mean, tell us a little bit about your experience with these companies in China, and then I also want to get in some questions. So everyone, who please warm up your questions.
So
tell us about your experience.
Yeah, so Google, the situation with Baidu was constant, never ending, and I missed the very beginning where Google exited from China. I wouldn't say it was forced. It just the multifaceted story there.
Sure. It's in my book, Silicon Dragon, folks, if you want to read.
I'm sure there are a lot of insights, right? So
but you're there living and breathing some of this.
Yeah. So when I was there, though, it's very interesting how it is. Even though Google no longer had a B2C business in China, right? When I joined in late 2010, Google had announced that search engine would no longer be available
Right.
to China, right? Or would no longer censor the search engine, right? That means they're waiting to move it. But still, after that, Google still had a very sizable B2B business. It was huge, but nobody knew about it. It's not household name for some of the services we provide. But still, I noticed that every time we did something, and then Baidu would do something similar. Even our doodle, right? I was in charge of marketing. Every time we do a doodle, Baidu would do a doodle similar to us. And then we did Google did a autonomous driving car, and Baidu would come out with that. And then they don't even try to change the shape of the lidar. So that's interesting. So I don't know if this is. I wouldn't blame them in many ways because that's probably the best way, fastest way to make progress. So interesting that way. But unfortunately, what worked for Google in the US, may not work for Baidu in China, just because the ecosystem is so different, right? So that's where I felt a little bit sorry for them. So the eBay Alibaba story is a little bit different. Alibaba was very nimble, and they didn't just copy blindly, and they were not able to either because at the time Alibaba was tiny when I was there, 2004 to 2006. And eBay had all the power in terms of capital, So our yearly budget was 100 million. That was like unheard of back then, like 2004. And then Alibaba didn't have that much money, so we blocked pretty much all the internet websites. Sina was the major one, right? We find a way to make a deal. So they were not allowed to do any promotion for Alibaba for Taobao. And then we had all the know-how. But Alibaba was very nimble. They could change their products on the fly, and they could do a lot of things that we either couldn't do, technically, or we didn't want to do legally, for example. A lot of interesting learning out of that experience for me.
Yeah. So has that influenced your investing style or your investing?
Definitely. No, I feel I was maybe right in the middle of it. And after experiencing eBay and then watching some of the companies at Google, I felt like eBay had a error list. Every possible error a multinational can make in China, they have it. They made it. Then the next company comes in, they shorten the list a little. The next one shortened it a little bit more. And towards the end, I think the one that was closest in succeeding in China was actually Uber. And Airbnb was not far behind. So they still have a couple of things on the list, but they got really close. So China market is really tough. It's a huge, people have every incentive to fight you to death, right? And in every way. Some of them are noble, others are not quite noble, but they do it anyway. But I hope one day we'll we'll see a company, not just people like Apple or GM with a lot of hardware, right, which is hard to copy, but the software, the services can succeed in China. This seems to be unlikely now, right? More unlikely than, let's say, 3 years ago. With the current geopolitical tension. But on the other hand, I think the Chinese companies have come a long, long way, right? If you go back to where I started my business, 2006, mostly everything we did was C2C, right? Copy to China, not a consumer to consumer. Then you first copy and you find a way to localize. And nowadays, I see a lot of areas where you can loosely dub it CFC, right? Copy from China, because China is leading in a few sectors, and they're being very innovative. They're very creative. So I can clearly see, well, to me clearly, that some of the things they're doing in China can be applied to the US. And that really is influencing my investment decision these days, among other things.
So among your portfolio companies, then, is there one that you feel is highly innovative, that is something more innovative than was originally in the US?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. Continue the earlier point. In US, when you invest in startups, right, the pure tech, the hardcore technology ones are very attractive to me. You don't see a lot of these companies in China, right? When I was investing in China, I also, when I was even sitting here, I also watched the ZhenFund's IC meeting. IC means investment committee, right? So that's where people present their cases, and then we make decisions afterwards. So on average, every Monday, you see like 8 to 10 cases. So my impression is 90% of the pitches were not really technology startups.
Mm-hmm.
They're again, innovation on business models, innovation on execution, on channels, on different resources. But occasionally you see somebody have a technology startup idea. I have this great technology, this is gonna enable whatever, and nobody else knows about this technology. Very occasionally you see that, but when you do see, it's very likely the founders are overseas returnees, right? They're fresh out of US, back to China. And in Silicon Valley, that seems to be reversed, right? You'll see a lot more of technology-oriented startups. And then execution is not as high. Sometimes I feel like, founders here can benefit from, focusing on execution once in a while, because you can do so much more, with both technology and execution.
I see. So the founders of the companies that you have in your portfolio now, are they, tell us about their background.
Yeah, so overall, I think 50% or a little bit over 50% are Chinese Americans. That because the legacy, when I was at ZhenFund, we were encouraged to invest in these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if they wanted to go back to China in the early years. But then in the last few years, it was okay if they wanted to stay in the US, because US is a very large market. And there are precedents that the Chinese entrepreneurs could make it in certain sectors in the US. Take Zoom founder Eric Yuan, for example, right? Like I mentioned earlier, majority of them are pretty tech heavy. So nowadays the sectors range from the typical TMT, means technology, media, and telecommunication, to new energy, to consumer, to a lot of e-commerce. So it's all over the place. There are a few sectors I don't feel passionate about at this point, but all others are open to me. Pretty diversified group.
Machine learning and AI, are they on your
Sure,
radar?
yeah. I mean, machine learning and the AI are pretty much standard equipments for everything, right? Standard requirements for every company now.
That's one of those cross-functional areas.
Yeah.
But what are the big successes have you seen among the Chinese in this area of spending?
Yeah, so there's several. One of the companies I am very fond of is that the company called Dandelion Energy, like the flower, right? Dandelion, and they do geothermal. This company came out of Google X. Used to be Google X. Now they just call themselves X Inc. So so Google X incubated them for 2.5 years. You know, if you, I'm sure you had interacted with them. So their thing is, look, if you want to set up a project within Google X, right? The original requirement is 3 things. You know, it must be a global thing, meaning that you have to be able to benefit 1 billion people, right? One project got killed because they could only benefit like 300 million, right? So it has to be global, 1 billion or above, and it has to be a technology solution. It cannot be a religions or a psychological solution. It has to be a technology solution, and it has to be a new technology, right? So that you can do 10x. With existing technology, chances are you cannot do 10x. So this company set up to solve the energy consumption issue. Situation is, you know, for home energy consumption, 40 to 70% was consumed in heating and cooling, especially heating. So you know, people use gas, use electricity, use whatever. So the company says, look, you have a big battery under your feet, right? That's your backyard, front yard. So they drill a hole 300 feet deep and they make a loop, right? They put water in there, and then the water temperature is constant because the ground temperature is constant after a certain depth.
Okay.
And then they use that heat, they compress it in the winter to make it pretty warm and pump it into your room, right? And they do the reverse in summer. So brilliant technology, right? Very environmentally friendly and super cheap. So they typically knock on your door and say, look, Rebecca, you know, say you're in the Boston area. Did you spend $1,200 in your January heating bill? And typically they're 5% accuracy, right? 95% accuracy. And you say, yes, they say, okay, Rebecca, do you want to cut it to a fraction? And by the way, save the earth along the way. I don't know why you say no, right? So, and no competition. So currently they have great technology, great execution. So that's my favorite.
Okay, Dandelion Energy.
I feel like I'm promoting the company.
Oh, well, you are. They just got a huge advertisement from you, but yeah, everybody go out there. So Judith, we have a question specifically about your fund. What is the minimum investment in your fund as an LP?
Yeah, so it's 1 million and for institutional, and then $500,000 for individual.
Okay. And we have another question. This one is from Matt Creelan. What technology verticals or business model trends are you seeing as opportunities in the copy from China approach you mentioned?
Okay, Rebecca, you have to charge fees for me. No, I'm kidding. But there's a few sectors I feel China is having abundance of innovations. You know, I feel e-commerce, especially in some subsector of e-commerce, right? You know, for example, social e-commerce, you know, maybe community e-commerce. Sometimes people call it the neighborhood e-commerce. So that's one.
Is that like Pinduoduo or one of those kind? Or
yeah, Pinduoduo is a social e-commerce, right? They're doing this in a brilliant way, but also recently there are some of the community e-commerce, community-oriented e-commerce in China. They're just doing really well, and then I invested in one of them in the U.S. Kind of you know, borrowed a few things from Chinese counterparts. So e-commerce is one, and then education in some sectors, and then social and mobile payment and short form videos, you know, to name a few.
Okay. So Paul shared has a very good question here, bringing in a deeper issue. From your vantage point, what is the single biggest misconception U.S. politicians have with respect to the China technology threat?
Wow, I'm sure I'm qualified to. I'm just watching what they do and see, you know, if there are business opportunities. So I don't know if this is, you know, the opinion held by every politician, but I feel China is not that invincible. China has its own vulnerabilities. So especially in basic research and technology part. So I'm not sure if this is, recognized by every politician in this country. Even though everybody, assuming they have all the best intentions. So.
Okay. Now I know we have someone on the line from Mongolia, and I know that he has a question about whether a small fund, say from Mongolia, could actually, invest with any of the larger funds in China. Is that possible or an impossibility?
Say it again, Rebecca. Large fund.
Let's say you're managing a small fund, and let's say you're in Mongolia.
Yeah. Oh,
which
okay.
is where our questioner is coming from.
Yeah.
Is there any way that that they can participate in this China tech scene as a small fund? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's possible. You will have to get into the community investment and the startup community.
Yeah.
In China, though, it's very competitive, right? So the deals are, very hot, and then the good ones, and increasingly, you have to make the decision very fast. You have to have deep pocket. Yeah. It's a very competitive scene.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would imagine it would be pretty challenging. You would really have to get into. You have to know the people and know the network, and
yeah, and also there are new players moving in. For example, Hill House, right? Hill House has, I don't know how many billion, like an $80 billion fund, and they are now moving to the seed, the angel stage, right? So it's pretty hard to compete against them. So.
Oh yeah, yeah, but I can see that. So today, what do you see as the biggest opportunities in tech? What just in general? It doesn't have to be about your fund. Just what do you see as the biggest game changer out there?
I think there are many, right? Even in some of the sectors people talk about constantly, I feel there are very good opportunities. New material, energy, and then blockchain, and just who knows, like supercomputing. There are many areas. To me, it's not really about the technologies. It is about technology, but not only technologies. It's really, for me, it's the team, right? So for example, I always encourage the team to have a plan B, not get so fixated, at the angel stage, of course, right? In the original idea. You try something, and if you see momentum, keep at it. If you don't, don't keep spinning the wheel. Be open-minded. Some of my portfolio companies pivot in a very significant way, right? They can even pivot into a completely different sector, which actually more likely than not, they actually have a better success.
I see. Yeah. So what percentage of your companies right now are in this pivot mode?
I haven't counted, but I would say probably significant pivot. More than half of my companies have experienced that. Very few companies never did. Very few.
So what's involved when you talk about restructuring the cap table? Like, how many lawyers do you have to work on something like that?
Yeah, we have a law firm, and I was telling my partner yesterday, I'm like, hey, the biggest ticket item we have every month is the lawyers, right? So he said, yeah, forget about our employees or whatever, everything else. The legal fee is the biggest. But yeah, we have lawyers, and they come in to help with different things. Merger acquisition, we have a very specialized lawyer, and then the CFIUS, right? We have the best lawyer who is in DC, and then the regular, corporate stuff, we have a lawyer. Yeah, it's just constant. We always, we're always on the phone with the lawyers.
Sure. So Paul again has a big picture question about what is your sense of how China's political leaders view China's big tech or expect of it? And he said he would appreciate your insights.
I think it's quite amazing that how Chinese government, the top leadership, pays attention to the latest technologies. They adopt super fast, right? So everything they can deploy to enhance their efficiency, they do it. Which is the situation that's fairly unique, right, among all countries, not to mention the big ones. So of course, one can argue that's good and bad, but it is what I see. So that's why, in general, they liked the tech startups. Of course, with the caveat that you don't create trouble. You create trouble, then there are consequences.
Yeah. Well, okay. Do you think that that's what happened with Jack Ma?
I think there probably more things will emerge, more reasons why he's in the current situation. But I think doing what he does, it's a high risk area anyway. So I mentioned briefly that some of the things that we at eBay didn't want to do, we couldn't do it in the first place. And so they did it. For example, our PayPal, right? PayPal was in China, team landed in China 2003. And we were talking to People's Bank, the central bank equivalent, all the time. And then they're always like, hey, we have no law yet. We're gonna make a law so that we'll tell you, how you're gonna proceed. But before then, hold your horses. But along came Alibaba, became Taobao. All of a sudden I heard rumors from our merchants, online merchants, that hey, pay attention now. Taobao has some secret weapon they're gonna unleash. So it turned out that it's Alipay. They call it Zhifubao, right? If you think about Zhifubao, where the heck they get the name, right? They copied it from PayPal, right? They did a direct translation of PayPal, right? They arrived at Zhifubao. So, and then so they were launching it, and our colleague went to the Federal Reserve equivalent and said, hey, there's something going on. You want to pay attention to it? Don't you worry, right? We'll shut them down if they do it. And they launched. And then we're like, hey, time to shut them down. They're like, yeah, don't you worry, or shut them down. Long story short, 2 years later, we're like, are you gonna shut them down or not? They're like, we don't know. Suit yourself, PayPal. So how do we suit ourselves, right? You have a law against that. Do you expect a multinational company actually just do this, right? Blatant violation to the law. Taobao could do it. We couldn't, right? So it's an indirect way to say, there are things that they have done, we couldn't do.
Right. Well, Jack Ma is a daring person.
Yeah, so he's got support. Back then, he's definitely got support from very, very high up, right?
Yeah.
So is there free lunch? Maybe, for a couple decades.
Right. Okay. So Lawrence Tang of Invest Hong Kong wants you to ask a question about autonomous driving and your outlook of U.S. and China tech development and adoption of autonomous driving in China.
Yeah. Okay, so this is from my personal opinion. I'm a VC. I'm not an expert. So our knowledge typically is like a mile wide and inch deep. So for me, I feel autonomous driving is potentially where China, at least in one area, has advantage, which is the society coordinated effort, championed by the government, of course. So to me, the Google cars, right, the Waymo cars were like 99% ready, maybe 98% ready, long time ago, right? The issue they were chasing after, they're trying to solve very hard, is that in one case scenario, real case, right? the car was driving in a country road in a little town. All of a sudden they found a duck, all right, crossing the road, and they were trying to make a decision: should they stop or should they risk killing the duck? And then, before they actually arrived at a solution, the old lady came out, right, chasing the duck. So this is the case. What do you do, right, if you're an algorithm? And very much a corner case scenario for all these things. So how do you expect machine learning to learn about all these possible scenarios, right? Maybe in the next 20 years? I don't think so, right? Because new things will keep, random things will keep coming up. So this is where if you have a more coordinated effort, and say in Guangzhou, right? This is actually where Chinese government is doing this, right? All the major autonomous cars companies are in Guangzhou. And they say in Nansha district, we're going to do this, right? We're going to seal all the major roads. We're going to pave the road with a cheap magnetic strip. And then, if you're a pedestrian, you follow the signals. If you don't, you're at your own risk, right? So this will remove tremendous amount of effort from the autonomous cars. And better yet, since they have the what they call Tianyan, the monitoring system everywhere, right? So how about use that, use a slight bandwidth of each of that, in the intersection, and just tell the incoming cars, right, when they have a blind spot, look, another car is coming away, right? Just little signal. It doesn't have to give them all the facial recognition, just a car is coming at the speed. So that will solve a lot of issues, right? So this is where I see it's not technology issue, it's more of a coordination. But if you don't do that, I'm not sure how long before you can really feel comfortable with all the corner cases solved. So.
Right. Do you think Tesla's going to win the market, or are you going to see a Chinese model? You don't think Tesla will win the market?
So, oh, you mean the? Are you still referring to the autonomous driving scenario?
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether Elon Musk's plan to go without a LiDAR system is a good one or not. So I don't think the verdict is in yet.
Okay. And so just one other question before we get to our usual poll. The question from Bergen and from Mongolia wants to know about overseas returnees. Is this a model of entrepreneurship that could apply to other markets, other emerging markets that you're seeing besides China? It worked really well in China. Yeah. And I guess to some degree in India as well, right?
Yeah, it did.
What do you think?
I think if we call it success, then there are a couple ingredients, right? One is you have the talents in the US, and then the talent pool is significant enough. And then secondly, you have either domestic market that they can create their business, large enough domestic market, or if you don't, then there is an ecosystem to go overseas, right? When I was in Google China, we knew we had the data, how big the developer community is, meaning that programmers trying to make games and apps, sell them on Google, on Apple App Store, and huge, right? They're like hundreds of thousands of people, and they make real money. And then they have this pretty well-developed ecosystem where they have investors, they have programmers, they have marketing people, they have BD people, they know all the tricks. So that's a significant chunk of business too. So I imagine, when you come to a smaller country, smaller than India and China, such as Mongolia, such as Vietnam, domestic market is something that you can compare, you can get your answer quickly, whether it's worth it or not. Then if not, then you can think about the overseas market. You have to anchor your effort into some areas first, right? In the past, well, still a lot of people believe that US, if you win US, you have won 50% of the global market, right? But if you don't focus on US, like nowadays, right? There's a ICTS, new executive order, make it pretty difficult for Chinese entrepreneurs to aim US market. So then, if the folks enforce this executive order, there might be a vacuum for other countries, developer to come in. And then, so China now, a lot of people, in the last few years, started to focus on India market. Then they got kicked out, and then they're focusing on Southeast Asia, and then some of them are focusing on Africa. So, but keep in mind that these markets are not as large as US or potentially India. India is large, but the ARPU is different. Average revenue per user is different, very different. Right. So long term, probably attractive. So all these are the real factors you have to consider, take into account.
Sure. Okay. Let me see how we're doing on our questions here. If we answered all the questions that we have. Thank you everyone for your great questions from the audience. So we did talk a little bit about the future of tech titans, the decoupling impact, the tech crackdown. We talked about the new rules. We talked about ByteDance in Hong Kong, the future of tech listings. Yeah, the decoupling. So I think we've done a pretty good job on covering the main points here, and some people who asked questions helped us out.
Oh, I meant doing, Rebecca, in answering the chat questions.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, there was another question that came in even about biomedical in China. Do you think that this is going to outperform biomedical in US? Are you interested in biomedical, or is that kind of off your?
We have investment in biomedical. I think it's doing really well in China. One of my good friends, ZhenFund founder, had just gone IPO in the US, and after barely not even 4 years. So this is a good example. The two founders are both overseas returnees. One is returning, one hasn't even returned. He's a full-time professor at Duke. So, he's got this pattern technology, early cancer detection at the gene level. So they did it, very effectively. So that's a sign of, in this sector, China's growing very fast.
What's the name of the company?
ZhenFund, GenETron.
Okay. All right. Look, do you think we're in a tech bubble or not? Because today was a good market, stock market day. Oh, okay. Somebody. Oh, good. There you go. Thank you. There's GenETron. Today was a good day for if you were an investor in Facebook or Apple. Are we in a tech bubble?
Maybe, but the thing that's different this time around is they have real revenue, right? Not only the revenues are sizable, they're getting bigger, faster than traditional industries.
Yeah, well, and this past year helped a lot on the revenue growth because we all went. That was our social life, right? Okay, it's online. So I'm going to launch the polling, and everyone, please respond to the questions. It's anonymous, and this is just a little bit of fun to wrap up our show. So I'm going to launch the polling now, and now you'll see the questions coming up right now. Well, the first one is really easy, but it's what is the best time for this show? Because I have struggled with.
I was trying to click on it and then realized I couldn't. Right, I'm not allowed.
Oh, okay. Well, you can tell if you want to wait.
That's fine. That's fine. I was trying to be a good soldier.
Okay. And which e-commerce tech titan is #1 in your opinion? And I gave a China choice and a US choice. And the same thing on social media tech titan #1, Facebook or ByteDance. And tech titan is top in your minds. Again, we've got the US, Elon Musk or Jack Ma. And then when are you planning to do your next business trip to China? Okay, come on, everyone vote. I need more people to vote so we can get a good sampling. Have you received your COVID vaccine yet? If not, do you plan to get a COVID vaccine and do your part? Um, okay, now let's see. People are, so Wei, what do you think is the best time for this show? Is 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. better? I'm
4
thinking
p.m. works for me.
it works for you. Okay, because it has to be something that's good for West Coast, East
Yeah,
Coast,
exactly. And Asia.
and Asia. So 4 p.m. actually, because right now we're 12 hours different from Hong Kong right now and China, but
Right.
in winter we're 13 hours. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I was
Oh, I
thinking
see.
maybe 4 p.m. for the winter winter hours,
I
and
see.
then 5 p.m. for the more summery spring hours.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
anyhow, I was thinking of that. So, but most
Right.
people like 4 p.m. 4
Yeah.
p.m. Got the win there, and you think so? And so, which e-commerce tech type is number one in your opinion, Wei? What do you think?
Oh, among between Alibaba and Amazon.
Amazon, yeah.
Yeah, can I have a third one?
Hey, you want the Facebook or the ByteDance question?
No, I want to
Oh, you
have.
want a third choice? What's your answer then?
I would say PDD today, if you ask me today.
PDD, Pinduoduo?
Yeah, Pinduoduo.
Oh, really? Okay. Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. Pinduoduo. Right.
Yeah. So in the US, Amazon is the king, right? Still,
Yeah,
until somebody toppled them.
yeah. Okay. And which tech titan is tops in your mind? Do you think more about Elon Musk or you think more about Jack Ma?
Me, Elon Musk. Yes.
And most people, almost everybody said, more than 2/3 said Elon Musk.
Yeah. Jack Ma is not really a tech person, right? He would say that himself. You know
That's
him.
true. He was running an e-commerce business, but he was never a techie.
Right.
So, okay. Now, most people, half the people say that their next business trip to China will be winter 2020.
Winter. Wow. I was hoping in summer or fall, late summer, early
Almost
fall.
no one in summer. How about you, Wei?
I wanted to go early as possible. I wanted to go summer, if possible.
Uh-huh. Well, you may be a lone soldier if you do that because
I
everyone's
know,
waiting.
if they allow me, right?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, they're loosening it up a little bit. And so 2/3 have received their vaccine. And there's, yeah, this is a really good group of people who have social good on their mind because no one said that they're not going to get the vaccine. So that's good. And now I'm going to end the polling and I'll share out the results to everyone. Share results. Okay. I hope everyone could see that.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Well, I think we can wrap things now, and I do really appreciate everyone joining in and joining the chat, joining the Q&A, welcoming Wei to our show, and yeah, so we have quite a good lineup coming forward, and our next speaker or our next VC is Jonathan Chi from Honey Capital. He's also Silicon Valley, China. Used to be with Foshan, but he's recently changed. So he'll be on at 5 p.m. May 26th. We did have an India show in here, but considering everything that's happening with India, the VC team didn't think it was the greatest time, and I have to agree with them. So anyhow, thank you for joining us. Special thanks to Invest Hong Kong. Special thanks to Silicon Dragon members, and we'll see you May 26th, 5 p.m. Pacific time for Jonathan Chi. And you won't be disappointed. You won't be disappointed. And I know you weren't disappointed with Wei and his remarks. Do you want to have anything you want to share?
Well, thank you everybody for the great quality questions, and thank you, Rebecca, for having me.
Yeah, of course. So we'll see you next time.
Great.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, Rebecca.
Bye-bye.